viewers all over the world. I'm so excited to be back with you. It has been a while, I must say, but we are forging forward in building healthy families and healthy marriages. I hope that you find this video very informative, as we're going to be tackling a very, very sensitive issue, a very crucial issue within the marital institution, which is communication. Please do subscribe and please do share this broadcast with your friends, with your family, married or unmarried. I believe that the information on this broadcast will definitely help somebody out there to build better, to build with more wisdom and more caution. Do remember that, when we are given a privilege to be in somebody's life, given a privilege to be a partner and a lifelong friend to somebody, we need to be continuously learning. We need to be continuously improving on ourselves in every way, in every area of our lives. And so I believe this broadcast is going to assist most of us in tackling the issues that are really crucial within our unions, and not just our unions, but even within our families. And so we're going to be tackling the issue of communication today, which is really one of the things that I usually mentioned when you engaged with people whose marriages maybe have collapsed or whose marriages are in trouble. You really find that communication is sometimes at the center of these problems, and you realize that with better communication, some of these issues could have been solved. Some of these issues could have been actually put to rest, and a solution could have been found for whatever grievances or whatever conflict there was within that union. And so I want us to understand that communication is so crucial, because for a person to come and join you and stay with you for the rest of your life, one of you had to initiate communication, which is the exchange of information. In other words, whether you met at church, whether you met in a function, one of you had to initiate and start the process of communication. And within that process of communication, both of you got to understand each other, both of you got to be attracted to each other, or each other's minds, or each other's school of thought, or each other's views or beliefs, whichever way it happened. But communication was right at the foundation of why you ended up together. There's nobody who's together today that actually skipped that first step of communication. And so whether you dated for a few months or for a few years, but that process was initiated by communication. And I think that we tend to think that good communication skills come naturally, especially for us believers and spiritual people. We tend to think because we are spiritual and because we go to church and because we know God, that there are things that come naturally to us. I personally believe that communication is something that you have to work on every day. I believe that it's a skill that you have to perfect. Nobody is born knowing how to communicate. We perfect it as we go. We learn as we interact with different individuals what to improve on and how to interact with the world around us. So we are in a consistent process of learning when it comes to communication. Some people have put effort in that area, and in that way they find it very easy to manage relationships, even long-term relationships. You find that they have no problems managing those relationships. And so I wanted us on this video to sort of combat some of the communication blunders that we make within our unions, and that have caused a lot of havoc, a lot of crisis, a lot of anger, and a lot of misunderstanding, to the extent that people end up shutting down within their unions. And where there's lack of communication and where there's lack of information, people begin to assume. So assumptions within the marriage begin to choke the marriage, and sometimes you find that the marriage ends up in ICU, and sometimes it never survives because of this crucial factor of communication. So if you are married and you are watching this video, even singles, if you are watching this video, I want you to assess how you connect with people in your world, and maybe you can combat some of these communication blunders that we so often make but are not aware. And so I also want to, before I get to the points that I want to give you today, it's only a few points, I also want to highlight that in a big way, the way we communicate has been shaped by the way that we've been raised. If you're an African man, or you are you grew up in an environment, or African woman, you grew up in an environment where you are not supposed to express your views, where you were attacked or maybe beaten or whatever the case is for trying to express how you feel, you tend to take certain communication styles all your way to your adult years, where you really do refrain from expressing yourself in any way, and you whenever you feel shut down, you find it difficult to come out and actually speak about the things that are going on within your system. So we're going to have a look at these 5 blunders, and then we're going to assess ourselves based on these 5 blunders and see how we can improve on ourselves. With that being said, our upbringing really has a huge role to play, and some people interact with their world based on how they were brought up in terms of communication. And with the generation that is before our generation also inherited certain communication patterns from their own parents. And so we need to identify some of these communication blunders, even if they have been passed on to us, maybe from our own families and our own extended families. And so I want us to combat this thing of the first point is silent treatment. Silent treatment has a tendency of being manipulative by nature, although in some instances, in some contexts, you find that people often resort to silent treatment because they feel unheard, they feel attacked, or they feel that they do not have a platform to share their feelings. But silent treatment has never solved any communication problem, because the more you are silent about the things that are going on within your system and the things that you should be expressing and the concerns that you should be expressing about where you are in your union and some of the decisions that you need to take, is the more you become like a ticking time bomb. In other words, you become somebody who is triggered by anything because you are carrying so much information that is left unsaid. And a lot of couples resort to this type of communication, and people say, but it's not communication, because when somebody is silent, they are not saying anything. Silent treatment communicates a lot of things within a relationship. Though it is manipulative by nature, sometimes when people use this method of communication, they want to go into their shell so that the other spouse always has to feel like they are the ones that have to come and dig to find out what is happening. They always want to be on sort of like a victim side of things. And so with the silent treatment, you find that the other spouse is reaching out to find out what is going on within that silent room, or within that cold room that you have gone into. And so silent treatment is one of the most toxic traits or toxic ways in which you can resolve conflict, because it never solves anything. It leaves a lot unsaid, it leaves a lot hanging, and you find that when you guys are fine, or when the relationship is fine, the person that is in the relationship with you never really gets to understand what was happening to you at the time when you were silent. And possibly they could have felt rejected in that time. They could have felt helpless in finding solutions for the particular union. So as I did say, people do resort to this type of treatment, sometimes when they feel unheard, sometimes when they feel like their contributions are not being entertained, sometimes when they feel attacked. Some people go into silent treatment because they don't want to be attacked back. So it can be used both ways. Some people use it as a manipulation method. Some people use it to protect themselves within the relationship. And so when you have a spouse who likes to resort to this type of behavior, it's always advisable to calmly approach them to try and access what is happening within their world. It becomes worse in a relationship when this type of treatment, usually when it comes from a male, because the male is seen as the head of the house, and the male within the relationship sets the tone of the relationship and how the relationship should flow. And so sometimes when the other spouse, if it's a woman, is trying to look for leadership, they find that they are not being able to access the information of where their spouse is as a leader and which direction do they think that their relationship should take. So I thought I should just talk around the silent treatment, that if you are a person who practices this within your union, it's time to unlearn that behavior, because that is something that can be unlearned. And in unlearning it, because some people have done this all their lives, for them it comes naturally to just sort of retreat in silence without communicating their views or their emotions. It's time to unlearn that and learn to communicate whatever is happening within your system in a healthy way. And if you find that your thoughts or your inputs are still not entertained in that environment, then that is when you reach out for help for your union, because then it means that from the other side, whatever you are trying to initiate is not being reciprocated. And so this is definitely a dysfunctional behavior within a relationship, because it causes more tension. It never solves anything. Okay, then this is the second blunder that we make, or the second mistake that we make when we communicate with our spouses or with anybody around us. This is what you call listening to answer. When you are in a relationship, you should not be listening to answer, but you should be listening to understand. Because communication is an exchange of information, and there should be no breakdown in what the messenger is trying to communicate to you, because you already have an answer for what they have to say, sometimes without even understanding what they have to say. And so this mistake, it's something that we need to polish. I think most of us have been there, especially when you are in the heat of the moment and an issue is being raised. Listening to answer and sort of defend yourself comes first before you actually listen to understand what the other person is trying to say. And so I believe that in all our getting, we should get understanding. Whenever there is an exchange of information within our relationships, before we even personalize it, we need to be in a position where we hear the other person and understand what they are trying to say. And if we don't understand what they are trying to say, we ask them to rephrase that or elaborate on what they are trying to say. Because remember, I told you that communication is something that we improve upon. It's actually a skill. It's something that we are supposed to be working on every day. So you can't say, this is just the way I am. That is very poor insight in terms of communication. When you communicate with somebody, always try to understand their side of things and their view of things. So we listen to understand, we don't just listen to answer. And then the third point that I want to highlight to us, I did mention that we are definitely from different backgrounds, and some people grew up in backgrounds where really people went through serious fights and outbursts of anger and this and that, and there was so much drama in the household that you find that sometimes even people as adults, they sort of always resonate with that type of communication. When they feel misunderstood, when they feel hurt, or when they feel offended, the first response of theirs is to just rise up with outbursts of anger. And so it becomes a challenge, because when your first reaction to things is always anger and outbursts of anger, you never really in the state of mind, are able to process any information that is being communicated to you within that marriage or within that relationship, because you already see yourself as the offended one, you already see yourself as a victim, you already see yourself as the one that is in the corner, and you are fighting back. And anytime you fight back on that level, usually you find that words are many, and where words are many, sin is not absent. We find that people say things that they did not mean. That's why the Bible says that anger, it resides in the bosom of fools, because when you are angry, especially with extreme anger, you say things that you cannot reverse. You say things that probably long after that argument is gone, you are not able to rectify, or you are not able to undo. And so the Bible does speak about the emotion of anger, that as well, it's not that you will never be angry in your life, but in your anger, do not sin. In your anger, do not sin. In your anger, do not sow seeds that will destroy your marriage in the long run. In your anger, always find a locus of control to say, let me collect myself before I can express the emotion that I'm experiencing, or before I can express the offense, or before I can express what is really troubling me. And so outbursts of anger in some families is seen as normal behavior, because that is how people resolved their problems. They would scream at each other, they would they would exchange words, and they would hurt each other with words, and then life will go on after that. And so sometimes when you see outbursts of anger, it is a sign that there's something that a person has not healed from their past, or there are things that have been going on in the union that have not been attended to. Whenever you see an outburst of anger, it's always a result of underlying issues that are not resolved. So if you are a spouse and you are within a marriage where you always find yourself exploding in anger, that is something that should be attended to, either through counseling, either through deliverance, either through healing of some sort in terms of your emotions, because anger is always a sign, especially extreme outbursts of anger. It's always a sign that there are underlying issues that you as a spouse or a partner have not dealt with. And so living with somebody that is angry affects the communication problem, it affects the communication in the relationship, because then a person feels like they have to tiptoe around you, which is unhealthy. They're always trying to keep you happy, and sometimes at their expense. And so it's unhealthy to have this type of thing happening whenever you are trying to communicate. So it's outbursts of anger that are prominent in families, and they need to be combated as well. And so then you've got number 4, the people that are just defensive whenever there is communication. They never want to take any ownership of any wrong or any challenge that is going on in the relationship. They are not emotionally intelligent. They always want to shift the blame to the other spouse. They never look at their contribution towards the current problem. They are always defensive. They are always the victim. Very manipulative type of people. Even when they are wrong, usually they will never say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm sorry, I hurt you. It will always be flipped back to you. It will always be pushed back to you, that but you're the one who pressed my buttons, but you are the one who disrespected me, but you are the one who did this. They never take ownership of what they have contributed towards the problem that you are facing. And so being defensive is not a good thing within your marriage in terms of your communication. When your spouse is expressing their feelings of what has offended them and what is not working in the union, you should rather take ownership and see how you can work towards fixing or finding a solution for that particular problem. Then you've got your insensitive people when it comes to communication. You get people, they might not have outbursts of anger, they might not really throw plates around or curse or do anything of that sort, but it's the kind that they call themselves straight talkers. Usually when they want to sugarcoat what they are doing to their spouses, they will call it straight talk. And sometimes a straight talk, right behind the straight talk, you'll find that there are very insensitive words being said, there are very insensitive statements of judgment, there are very insensitive levels of expectations from their spouse. So you find people that are in, I always call people that are insensitive, I always call them selfish, because we live in a world that has different types of people with different types of problems. And if you are going to be a good communicator, this is something to have a look at, that you need to be sensitive to the needs as well and the hearts of those that are listening to you. And this is not just in relationships, but even on a larger scale. And so I believe that the insensitive type of communicators within the marriage really cause a lot of problems. They cause more harm than good. They could be saying something that is very good and very relevant, but the way that they are saying it, there is no tact. The way that they are saying it, there is no sensitivity in bringing their point across. And so I thought today, let me share these 5 communication blunders that probably we need to combat in our union, so that we can have more healthy relationships with our families, more healthy relationships with our spouses. So it's the silent treatment which needs to be combated. It can be unlearned, it can be attacked, just like it's attacking you on a daily basis. It can be attacked back. It's things that can be unlearned for a healthier relationship. And so listening to answer is one thing that also needs to be unlearned within our unions. We need to be more active listeners, where we sit and take in the information of the person that is trying to communicate to us. And so then we looked at anger outbursts, that anger leaves more of a rift than anything else. That's why the Bible speaks about our conversations always being seasoned with grace, because it's important to have conversations that are seasoned with grace. In other words, we can have a tough conversation, but if it's seasoned with grace, we can reach a solution peacefully, and we can reach a solution without causing havoc within the peace of the marriage or within the entity of our marriage. And then we have your defensiveness, which is now the people that are always shifting blame, people that are never taking ownership of anything or any contribution towards the problems that are being experienced in the relationship. Then we've got the insensitive communicators, which are now your communicators that they tell the truth, but they don't tell it with tact. It has tendencies of rudeness in it. It has tendencies of belittling. It has tendencies of not building, but actually destroying the peace of the marriage. So I thought we should share those today, and hopefully, within your unions, 1 or 2 of you have grabbed something, and you are going to really combat those things. It takes practice. It takes a willing heart. It takes humility to say, listen, I'm in a marriage, but I'm not a good communicator, and I'm seeing some of these, things that have been mentioned above, and I need to be intentional about really unlearning them and changing my behavior. And really, as I said before, communication is a skill, can be polished, and with better communication we'll have healthier marriages, and therefore we'll have healthier children, because our children actually pick up our communication styles. So whatever we do in the house, you find that our kids will pick up that communication style, and then as well as they interact with their world, they will basically be implementing what we have taught them. And so I hope that this video made a difference in your life, and so please do share it, and again, please do subscribe. I'm looking forward to our next one. Till next time, bye.